and I want to welcome you to today's video town hall. We chose this topic, coping with collective and individual loss, because of the special mission that JourneyCare has in the many lives of people we serve and touch every day. Over the last 5 to 6 months, we've all been experiencing different feelings, different emotions. And here at JourneyCare, we work with not only the patient's well-being and their health, but more importantly, sometimes the family's health, the family dynamics between brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, and grandparents and siblings. Today, we are going to be talking to 3 experts in the field of love, 3 individuals who have passion for their faith and how the therapy and relationship between oneself and emotional and spiritual beings come into one. I'm excited for this topic. This is one that some people don't feel comfortable talking about. This is a topic that is very personal to many people. And today we have been able to ask 3 people with differing backgrounds and viewpoints, and we'll be able to have a little Q&A later. Again, my name is Joseph Maddie. On behalf of the foundation, I want to thank you and welcome you to today's town hall. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce our CEO, Ms. Kimberly Hobson. And before I ask her to speak, one quick funny thought of this. Anytime we do events or meet and greets, we would always on the foundation prep the CEO, make sure she has all of her talking points or thoughts that we would make recommendations on. And I said, do you need anything for today? And she started laughing. She goes, if I need something for today, we have a problem. It just goes to speak to who Kimberly is as a person, as a leader, and somebody that not only leads with her background and experience, but also with her heart. And I think that's a unique experience that we here at JourneyCare have an advantage over other disciplines. So with that being said, Kimberly, please take it from here. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. I tell you, I've been here nearly a year. In 15 days, it'll be a year. And the one thing that I can say is that I appreciate Joseph Maddie. And Joseph Maddie and Kimberly Hobson have become what I like to call the dynamic duo. So, Joe, thank you for all that you do for JourneyCare and the way that you have gotten me acclimated to this organization and the volunteers and just the way that we do things from a foundational perspective. And so thank you for that. I wanted to just say good afternoon and thank everyone for joining us. As you all know, we're living through some times right now like we've never seen before, and that we will likely never see again in our lifetimes. No one could have ever imagined that we would be locked in our homes, we would be wearing masks, we would be losing those that we love, and we would not be able to move around freely like we usually do during this pandemic. And so nevertheless, we're here, even though we couldn't imagine it. And I think we must find our way through this. And the way through could be different for each and every one of us. And so I know we're talking about loss and all of those things, but I'm going to keep it relevant and talk about the loss that we have all felt during this pandemic and how I personally have been able to figure my way out and figure my way through this. And so Joe asked me to just share a little bit about how with my faith and the loss that I have experienced over the last many months, may it be loss of freedom, may it be loss of loved ones because I have lost loved ones due to this pandemic. How have I been able to cope with this? And the first thing that I would like to say is that I am a woman of faith. And I've been asked again to take a few moments to share how I'm getting through. And so I'd like to say that I've been gliding through smoothly with no bumps and no bumps in the road and everything was fine and I didn't feel strange in any way. But that would not be true. There have been moments in my life where I've had to work from home for several days and, I've just felt weird and out of sorts. And I could not always explain why. And so what I've done from the beginning of all of this that has come with the pandemic, I have turned to my faith to comfort me. You see, my faith is my solace, and it actually gets me through. So sometimes that faith shows itself by praying. Other times I'm reading items with comforting content. And yet at other times, you know, I am sitting quietly by myself, reflecting on how I have gotten through challenging times in the past, because for me, the best indicator of the future is what I have gotten through in the past. And I've been able to reflect and say, if you just be patient, you too will be able to get through this pandemic. And so I've been intentional and creative about staying connected to my friends and families. So even though I can't go to their house every time like I used to, I can be creative about ways in which I stay connected to them. I've also become very much better at exercising patience, because even though I've looked back and things have always worked their way out, I do believe that this pandemic could take us a little longer than we used to these challenging times taking us. So if we can just be patient and we can just be faithful and believe that we can get through this, and we will get through this together. And with that, I am faithful that this too shall pass.
Thank you, Kimberly. As you can see, I did not write any of that. That is from her heart, and that is who she is. And I think, again, that's what separates JourneyCare, is leadership like Kimberly Hobson.
Thank you.
And you're going to be able to hear from a couple other people in a little bit. But again, JourneyCare is so special in so many ways. But to be able to lead with your heart, talk about your faith, and understand that there are things that we can control and there's things that we cannot control. And as long as we can rely on each other, you know, Kimberly is the one person that's leading us. So thank you, Kimberly. At this time, thank you, ma'am. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Elise Majors. Elise was a board member with JourneyCare. She just rolled off about a year ago. She's a woman who has been very inspirational to me because of the fact that she is so open about how relationships work. And you have to be, to work in a marriage, it has to be two people. To work in a relationship, it's two people. It's understanding who you are and not being able to control everything. Not only that, but she was always able to, when we had our town halls with around the palliative care fund, she and her husband moderated our discussions. And to moderate a discussion with people who are at the top of their field in different aspects requires a lot of patience, but knowledge. And Elise is very passionate about what we do here at JourneyCare. Currently, she is the assistant director at the Rapolgo Center for Counseling and Wellbeing. She's one of their administrators there, and she has been working with adults and couples for over 30 years. So Elise, please walk us through your presentation, and thank you again for your support of our patients and families.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Well, I'm really happy to be here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about grief and loss, and I think I've heard plenty about it over the years that I've been seeing clients at the counseling center, and I think they're two of the most consistently present feelings that come up in almost every client I ever saw, because these are things that happen to us in life, not just now, but all the time. And I've noticed that these two aspects of life are especially important to our growth and our ability to evolve as human beings. So I'd like to share some thoughts about that with you today, and some of the things that I've learned about that over the years, because we're not just having a moment here, but we are still growing and evolving as human beings. Some of you may have heard of an author named Judith Viorst. She's written books and she's a humorist. And one of my favorite books of hers is called Necessary Losses. And I paraphrase her when I read this to you. We experience loss not only through death, but also by leaving and being left, by changing, letting go, and moving on. Our losses include not only separations and departures from those we love, but from conscious and unconscious losses of unrealized dreams, impossible expectations, illusions of freedom, power, of safety, and health. We lose our younger selves, the self that we had imagined, and the self that would always be unwrinkled, invulnerable, and immortal. In our world today, we are now being challenged with the stress of an uncontrolled virus that is sweeping the globe. It requires social distancing. Coupled with that are racial disparities that have simmered below the surface for a very long time and have now erupted in worldwide protests. We live with the threat of extreme weather catastrophes that are unpredictable, and the political climate in our country, as well as in others, threatens to break down, endangering everyone. And this is not hyperbole. So there's a lot going on, not just in each of us, but in our communities and in the world at large. So these are emotionally difficult times for everyone. And we each are having our own experience of loss and grief. What I want to tell you today is that some of this is natural and some of it is subliminal. I know that I am not fully aware of my own losses and grief. And to compound this situation, I miss my usual supportive communities from whom I can gain comfort and consolation in times of distress and sadness. Yes, I Zoom with my family and friends and the counseling center staff, but I know I need to see and feel the energetic strength of physically being around people I know and trust. I really miss that. I have had to find people and places where I can talk about my losses and grief. And these have largely been online through workshops, seminars, and phone calls. And like Kimberly, I've had to get very creative about how I can stay connected to the people that are important to me. Stop for a moment and think about some of the things that you have lost that may not have risen to the level of consciousness where you can grieve them. Some of mine are these things. No travel. I have traveled extensively my whole life. I cannot go to a foreign country. I cannot go to a favorite place nearby. I have lost confidence in airplanes and airports and airport security and even my neighborhood gas station. I have lost my freedom. On a more mundane level, I have lost the ability to go out the door and shop for groceries without worrying about who will be near me. Will they wear a mask? Are they positive for COVID or not? Should I wipe down the groceries? While I was in Florida this winter, my husband required a visit to the ER. I could not go into the ER with him. I have lost my sense of trust in the safety of medical facilities. As I sat alone in the car in the dark parking lot, I worried about his exposure, about the health of the medical professionals, and whether they could safely treat him or not. It turned out that they could, and he is well, but I grieve the loss of my belief that a visit to a doctor will be helpful, not hurtful. Up to now, I have not lost anyone close to me to this dreadful virus, but it has made me rethink what being mortal means and to contemplate what I would want my care to look like if I were to become critically ill. My natural state of denial, those instincts, are not as successful as they used to be. So much depends on us resisting what I've come to think about is a sense of despair, because I've felt it on occasion in these last few months. However, we can and we must cultivate the belief that I can make a difference in the world right now, even in the face of deeply distressing realities. So how might we resist this sense of loss and despair? First, own the feelings that you have. Talk about and own your fear, your anger, your sadness, your grief. If you can't tell someone about it, write them down. Getting them on paper really helps. There's actual therapeutic research that indicates this is so. Get up and move. Go outside if there is a safe place to do this. Physical activity is really important to decent mental health. We all have to develop coping strategies that work for each of us, because this is going to go on and on for a long time. Life will not return to normal the way it used to be. And in many ways, a lot needs to change. Find ways to put some structure into your daily life and do something creative. I'm with Kimberly on this. Write, draw, paint, dance, sing. You can watch music on YouTube. I just found out the Grant Park Symphony is doing music from their summer program online. There are wonderful, uplifting Zoom events of orchestras and groups of people playing or singing together. Some of them have made me cry. Don't underestimate the healing power of music. Read some poetry. Some of my current favorite poets are Mary Oliver, John O'Donohue, David White, Jan Richardson, Maya Angelou. Hers are timeless. There are many who can touch your core with beautiful words. In his book of poems, Rabbi Grolman wrote, "There is no way to predict how you will feel. The reactions of grief are not like recipes with given ingredients and certain results. Each person mourns in a different way." Finally, I find these words from Teresa of Avila, a Carmelite nun, Spanish mystic and contemplative theologian, really helpful. This magnificent refuge is inside you. Enter. Shatter the darkness that shrouds the doorway. Be bold, be humble. Put away the incense, forget the incantations. Ask no permission from the authorities. Close your eyes and follow your breath to the still place that leads you to the invisible path that leads you home. Thank you all.
Thank you, Elise. At this time, I would like to introduce Megan Andriano. In the foundation, we have the pleasure and honor of reading and receiving so many letters from our patient families, telling us about the amazing bedside care our physicians, our clinicians, and support staff have given their family and loved ones. One of the people that receives letters and is commented on numerous occasions regarding her compassion and her commitment to our patients and families is Megan. I've had the opportunity to work with Megan over the last 4 or 5 years. She is one of the reasons that JourneyCare is sought after because of our care. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Megan Andriano. She is a licensed counselor, and she is the director of our grief and support services. Megan?
Thank you so much, Joe, for that introduction. I have to admit, I've been excited about this presentation, but I've also been pretty nervous. So I just feel so grounded right now after listening to both Kimberly and Elise. So thank you. Talking about spirituality, I have to think about what even brought me to JourneyCare in the first place. I always say that the stars aligned of why I'm here. I have to actually go back to 1999. My family used hospice services for my father. It wasn't JourneyCare, but it was a caring hospice team nonetheless. I don't remember a whole lot of details, other than these major themes of my family was in tragedy, we were in crisis, and yet this hospice team let us feel equipped, let us feel safe, let us feel comforted. They let us feel that we could survive this after my dad was gone. My father had a really comfortable death in his bed. We were all home. I received grief services from my school and a community resource, and I felt very healthy about my own grief journey. I exercised, I made art, I talked to a counselor, learned different coping skills. I felt very good where I was in my grief. Well, fast forward to 2010, I was a graduate student looking for an internship, and a family friend of ours who had brought so much friendship to my mom, and her son was very close friends with my little brother. She was also a hospice nurse, and she actually is still a JourneyCare hospice nurse. And she let me know that there might be an internship opportunity. And I could feel the wheels in my head spinning. I had felt so confident in where I was in my grief journey, and yet with this opportunity, I was so nervous it would hit too close to home and that I wouldn't be able to do it. I was terrified. But yet I felt this pull, this need that I needed to do this internship. I needed to come to JourneyCare. And you'll hear hospice workers say this, that they don't choose hospice work, it chooses them. And I think that was the case for me as well. I felt this like a magnet, a need to do this when the opportunity was there. I had an incredible mentor, Jose, who I always say he professionally raised me. And he absolutely taught me counseling techniques and, professionalism. But we always came back to the grounding facts of spirituality, and that this work it's people, it's person to person, and we are there to accompany them on their journey. We're there to support them and the family. I was getting ready to graduate in the spring of 2011, and Jose actually got an opportunity and took a job elsewhere, but left a great word for me. So I was able to come on and work with JourneyCare right after graduation. I continued to take his teachings with me and teach them to interns over the years. And I have always said that JourneyCare, this work is my match. Several years pass, and I get the opportunity to work with this specific woman. And let me back up a second and say this woman had left a legacy in JourneyCare already. She was actually in the role of Jose before Jose had come on, and had left such a positive impression on the colleagues that were there. Her brightness, her compassion, her creativity, her flexibility. She just, if you were to say her name, everybody would just smile and share a positive thing about her. It was before her time, but unfortunately, she needed our services. And she ended up having a comfortable and peaceful death at our care center. And I was able to work with her and her family. And these themes of what's in our control and what's outside of our control have always been kind of at the center of this work, and how I cope too as a counselor and as someone who wants to help, is being able to witness these things that are outside of our control, like our current circumstances, but also what can we do? How can we make a difference? I'm so honored to have joined the Bereavement Team this year. It really brought the work full circle to see how life goes on. And it's very humbling to witness the heartbreak, but also the resiliency of our clients. One of the gifts of hospice work, one of our philosophies, one of our missions, is to empower a family to take care of their loved one, to let them know what to expect. We know this is going to be hard, but if we know what's down the road, we can prepare ourselves in certain ways as best we can. The same really translates to bereavement work as well, where people are, will continue to go through crisis and hard times in their grief, but for them to know this is normal, and also this is what you can expect in the months to come. Grief is absolutely a normal reaction to loss. And while I'm specifically talking about our grief counselors who are focusing on grief by death, we all are experiencing secondary losses and losses from death during this pandemic. Our team of counselors, they are licensed. They have years of experience in providing grief counseling. And part of their skill is in facilitating a safe space for their clients, active listening, having them feel heard, and also validating what they're going through. For someone to actually see something published in a book, in an article that has been studied, that it's normal and okay for you to be feeling anger right now, or sadness, or relief, guilt. Talking through all of these possible facets, I mean, it really is a crystal. There's so many facets that can be part of this grief journey. The pandemic has absolutely complicated grief for our clients. We're talking about sheltering in place, social distancing. We're talking about places being closed, not allowing visitors, or very tight restrictions on visitors. This absolutely complicates grief. We have clients, that may not have been able to be with their loved one at the very end of life or leading up to it. We have clients who weren't able to have a memorial service or celebrate their loved one in the way that they would have wanted, or at all. Maybe it's been put on hold. And again, not knowing when they will be able to have that service in the way they had envisioned. Part of the professionalism, I think, and expertise with this counseling team is the fact that also they know that they're always learning. And we continue to share articles with each other, attend different webinars together to try and learn as much as we can, as well as learning from our clients on what's working, what's not working right now, to help be with them in this moment, because this is so new to all of us. I'm so proud of not only the counseling team, but of our clients too, for transitioning into a virtual platform for grief support. I'm really happy to say that during this pandemic, we have continued to have our sessions virtually, whether it be on the phone or through a secure virtual platform on Skype. And learning as we go to make it effective. For instance, in a group setting, if someone is calling in, letting them know, hey, what you just said resonated with the group. I can see every other people's faces right now, and everybody's nodding to what you just said on this call. So adapting our counseling styles too, to have everyone have a presence in this new virtual space. So our team, we offer grief support in the first 13 months of the grief journey. Our curriculum, our program is really tailored to these first 13 months. We offer individual sessions, we offer groups, and we also offer workshops. We have one-on-one counseling available for our clients who have lost a loved one on JourneyCare services. And our groups and workshops are open to both JourneyCare clients and community clients alike. And again, our counselors are experts, and nothing against their counseling skills, but part of the magic really happens in peer support as well. That validation, not only maybe from a book or an article, but being able to hear someone else who is on that journey as well. It goes miles. We offer a general loss group as well as specifically a spousal loss group. We actually are also offering a loss of child group for our pediatric hospice families. That's led by one of our pediatric chaplains who is also licensed as a counselor. These groups, they run weekly for 8 weeks, and they are designed with having to register for them. And that's intentional in a way to, again, create a safe space where people can build rapport week after week. And I'm going to share a mission story in just a minute about how that can be really helpful and impactful as you're processing grief. We also have a group called Forward with Hope, and this is designed as a sort of a stepping stone, a bridge. It's for clients who have already completed an 8-week group, and then this group meets twice a month. And it helps them continue towards their graduation of our program. Our Navigating Grief workshop is more of a presentation style, and people can come in and listen and see the stages of grief, see what's to be expected, look at practical coping skills in kind of this hour-long workshop. I'm also really proud to say that this team has really stood up to support their colleagues as well. We offered a group called Navigating Together, in which one of our bereavement counselors facilitated a support group for staff, our clinical staff that were struggling during this transition as well, on how to best to care for their patients. We had 9 groups that were offered. And attendance ranged everywhere from 3 to 38. And again, not only were we able to offer some resources and validation, but for them to get validation from one another, just to hold that space for these professionals who wanted to be heard. We received really positive feedback from being able to hold that space for them. I do want to finish with an example of a mission story. This came from one of our counselors, and this story just really struck a chord with me and resonated with me. This is a client who had lost his wife on our services, and understandably so, he was experiencing a lot of anger in his grief. He was not able to identify a support system at all, and so he started coming into one-on-one sessions with this counselor. He was quite frankly in crisis with his grief, and the fact that he was able to come to these one-on-one, I think, shows so much determination in his process. The counselor recommended the spousal loss group to him, and he went, I think hesitantly, and he sat there for 6 weeks, listening and taking it in, but not saying a word. And then on the 6th session is when he opened up. He let out tears, he let out his story, and was, emotionally supported, embraced by this team that knew exactly what he was going through. He realized he wasn't alone. This group continues to meet just socially to support each other outside of our program. He has gained the support system with friends. I understand actually he has a new partner that he is with. And another piece is that he continues to offer support to others. This counselor, towards the end of her 8-week session, will have a panel of past clients that can speak to their journey and where they are maybe years down the line from the loss of their loved one. And he speaks on that panel now. and helps so many others that are just starting off on their grief journey. He continues to, he will email this counselor every once in a while and share how far he's come and how well he's doing. And that's what this team does. It's not easy work, but the clients, they show up and they have a space to be heard, to be validated, and to learn how to transition and live with this grief as it changes over time. Thank you so much for having me and listening. That completes my story.
Thank you, Megan. Before we go with some of the prepared questions, Elise, can you give us the name of the Carmelite nun? We've had a few listeners wanting to know the name of the Carmelite nun in the book.
Oh, it's Teresa of Avila, Avila. And I'd be happy to send that particular piece, which is one of my favorites, to you to post. It's
Thank you.
reassuring.
Question for the group. All of you have talked about caregivers, the impact that many of our caregivers are going through of losing a son or a daughter, a mother, father. What can you give the audience for coping with the additional complications and challenges presented with COVID? The tools to cope, both you as the caregiver, but also we have clinicians on the line right now listening to this. They too are the caregivers. They experience it differently. Any thoughts or comments or suggestions for both a caregiver in the field and then the caregiver at home? Megan, do you want to take that, or you're on mute, Megan?
Oh, yes, thank you,
That's
Joe.
okay.
Sure, yeah, I would love to speak to this. You know, Elise, I think, touched upon this a little bit, and really the equation for coping is, of course, going to look different for each person, and each day we might need different ingredients in our recipe for self-care soup, I like to call it. But some main ideas that I like to focus on is first, cover your basic essential things. Are you getting enough water? Are you able to try and get some sleep? And are you keeping your machine, are you keeping your body fed? Even if you're not hungry, making sure it's getting nutrients. Basic stuff, start there. The water is actually one of the simple things I have to keep reminding myself about in self-care. The other piece is absolutely is getting outside. Even if it's just for a minute, whatever you are able to grab is spending mindful time outside. You know, taking notice of the temperature, the wind, the bright sky, taking a deep breath, whatever you're able to get. If you're able to go for a walk, wonderful. Maybe this walk is by yourself. Maybe that's what you need one day. Maybe tomorrow you schedule a date, a phone date with a family member or a friend and catch up with them on that walk. And I think that would be the other piece too, is to try and schedule some things. Reach out to that friend and get it on the calendar that you have that phone date at that time. Or I try and remind my team of this, of put in your schedule right now when you're gonna step outside and you know, take a deep breath or go for a walk, take that little break. I think it has to be intentional and be scheduled. And then whatever, you know, and then these other pieces too, we've heard about making art, about writing. I think, you know, right now that social connection is something that we're all really craving. And my team has read this idea of not calling it social distancing. No, that's officially what it's called, but calling it physical distancing. Because we do want to stay socially connected, and we are trying to do that in any which way we can.
Elise, Kimberly, anything on that topic before we move to the next question?
Well, Joe, I would just add
Yes.
that we've started a support group at the Counseling Center for first responders because we think that those people are sometimes so exhausted by what they're doing for the rest of us that they may not have time, energy, whatever, to take care of themselves privately. And what I have heard is that being able to talk to someone else who is in a similar situation is a very supportive and important aspect of self-care for people who are witnessing trauma in the trenches in ways that the rest of us are not. And those people, I almost feel like they need extra care. And I think down the road, there's going to be a great need for people to find other like-minded souls where they can share their grief and loss, because they're sort of too busy right now. But we've tried to provide a place online where they can have some support from one another.
Thank you. One of the
only
questions,
thing,
yes.
Yeah, the
please.
only thing I would add is that we talked about self-care, but I think it's critically important that the caregivers acknowledge, and like Elise said, they may not have time to acknowledge it right now, but at some point, the need for self-care should be brought to the forefront for each and every person, and especially those that are caring for others. Once that's the acknowledgement of self-care comes, I believe that is the first step. And then being intentional about addressing and doing some of the things that Megan just talked about and Elise exemplified in her example. We should be intentional. Those caregivers have got to be intentional about knowing it's okay to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions came, we've had probably about 5 or 6 different questions, but I'm just going to paraphrase them into one. The increased stress that we're all under at this time, what has been or what could be the long-term health impact on ourselves?
Well, let me just start out by saying we don't know yet. The complexity and the magnitude of the layers of things that we are all experiencing, I think each of us have said it in different ways today. This has never happened before, and it's not going to happen probably again. And the long-term effects, let me back up a minute. There are going to be long-term effects. There are going to be long-term effects for everybody. And I think that what Kimberly just said about owning the need for self-care and the intentionality with which one goes about it will play a big role in how you survive in the long run. As a mental health professional, you know, I think when I started out, I thought, well, I should know a lot about this and I should be able to handle this. And I used to hear terrible things that have happened to my clients. You can't know how you're going to react to that. And you got to own that it's problematic to even just hear about that. So I think you just have to fess up here that you gotta say what it is and hope that there are resources available to us over the long haul so that we can all get help, because I think we're all going to need help.
You know, when I think about this stress that we're all under, sometimes we really don't always recognize that we are under stress or experiencing stress. So if I can speak personally for a minute, I tend to move through stress. And if you look at me each and every day, you'd never know. I don't even know that I'm stressed out of my mind. I don't even know it. And so I'm just moving through as if nothing is going on. But I do believe that there are some long-term effects of that. I don't know what this is going to ultimately do to me or make me feel. but I have had to recognize that the additional stress is there and that it's okay when I start to feel weird and out of sorts. I have one more example to share. And I think about one of my daughters. I have 31-year-old twin daughters. And one of them, she struggles with a little anxiety sometimes. So this, at the beginning of this pandemic, I thought it was going to take her over the edge. The stress just got so bad that I didn't know if she was going to make it till tomorrow. She was so freaked out. She was just like, why is this happening to the world? She couldn't understand. And so we really, really had to be intentional about being there for her when she needed us to be there for her, but then leaving her alone and giving her the time that she needed to move through her stress and what it would take us to find the balance with that. So stress comes in many ways. And as Elise said, we don't know how it's going to impact us, but we can rest assured that everyone, whether you feel it or not, you're experiencing it.
Well, this is at the 2:45 mark. I want to thank all three presenters for being vulnerable, for being open and honest. This is a lot different of a topic from last time, which was the legal sides of healthcare and COVID. So it's actually, I like this side a lot better. I think for those of you who are listening and watching, this is who JourneyCare is at its purest. This is why our clinicians, our therapists, and our leadership do what they do, is because of the fact that we are working with people at their most vulnerable. To the donors and community partners who are listening, thank you. We can't be doing these types of programs without your support, your belief in our organization. And a lot of these services that we provide, other organizations don't. We do it because we know it's the right thing to do for the family and the patients. So thank you to our leadership. Thank you to our donors and partners. And again, thank you to all the clinicians that do the work day in and day out. At this time, I want to just say, I hope you have a great 4th of July. Please check your email for the next topic. I'm supposed to know it right now, but I don't have it in front of me. So my fault. But please let us know if you have top comments or thoughts of what our topic should be. We'll be doing this as we've been doing this monthly. And again, thank you for all the support that you have given. And to our panelists, again, thank you for all you have done for our patients and their families, to listening, video, watching this, and in the field. So thank you, and have a great 4th of July weekend. Have a good day.